There's a place deep in the woods that no map dares to show anymore. Locals call it Blackwood Orphanage, but most just whisper the name, afraid that even speaking it out loud might draw its attention. It was shut down over 40 years ago, after a fire took the lives of several children. Or at least, that's what the official report said. The building still stands, half swallowed by the forest, its walls cracked, its windows blind. But if you get close enough, sometimes you can hear something inside. Footsteps, laughter, the sound of a ball bouncing on the second floor. Every few years, someone decides to go there. Ghost hunters, urban explorers, even curious locals, and they always tell a similar story. They all say the same thing. Once you enter the orphanage, it feels like you're being watched, like something is waiting for you to play. Tonight, you'll hear 3 stories from different people who stepped inside that place. 3 people who thought they were just exploring an empty building. None of them were prepared for what they found, and some of them never came back. These are 3 true scary stories from an abandoned orphanage. Listen carefully, because once you know its name, it might start calling you too. Story 1. The last game of hide and seek. I was 19 when I first heard about the orphanage. My friends and I were into urban exploration, breaking into abandoned factories, tunnels, old hospitals, just for the thrill of it. We never really believed in ghosts or anything paranormal. It was all just about the adrenaline. But that night felt different from the start. We were 4. Me, Liam, Sarah, and Josh. Sarah had found some old photos online, black and white shots of kids in uniforms standing in front of a large brick building. She said it was called Blackwood Orphanage, and it was just a 2-hour drive from our town. Supposedly, it burned down in the late 70s after a malfunctioning furnace caused an explosion. The place was fenced off, but locals claimed it was still mostly intact. When we got there, fog hung low over the trees, and the air smelled like wet wood and rust. The building rose up through the mist like something alive, tall. Broken windows staring down like hollow eyes. Creepy as hell, Josh muttered, gripping his flashlight. That we climbed through a hole in the fence and crossed the overgrown courtyard. There was a rusted swing set still standing. The seats swayed back and forth, even though there was no wind. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint scent of burnt paper. The walls were covered in peeling paint, and our footsteps echoed like we weren't alone. In the hallway, we found old toys scattered on the floor, wooden blocks, a small red ball, a doll missing one eye. Sarah pulled out her phone to record. "Okay, this is insane," she whispered. "This is exactly how it looked in the photos." Liam laughed. "Let's play hide and seek. Old school style." We thought it was funny at first, a childish dare in a place where children once lived. I was it, so I started counting while they ran off down the hall, their footsteps echoing through the orphanage. When I reached 10, I opened my eyes. The hall stretched in both directions. My flashlight flickered, and I started walking, calling their names. That's when I heard it. A giggle, a soft, high-pitched laugh, coming from one of the rooms. "Sarah?" I called out. No answer. I stepped inside. The room was empty, except for a row of small beds lined up against the wall. The sheets were still tucked in, like someone had made them just recently. On the nearest bed, I saw something written in the dust, letters traced by a small hand. "Your turn." I froze. Then I heard footsteps behind me, tiny ones, running. I turned my light, but there was no one there. The sound was already moving down the hall. "Guys, stop messing around," I shouted, but my voice sounded too loud. Like the walls were swallowing it, that I followed the sound into another room. There was a closet door slightly open, and something inside whispered. It wasn't words, more like breathing, shallow and quick, as if someone was hiding, waiting. "Josh," I said, reaching for the door that IT creaked open slowly. The closet was empty, just coats hanging, stiff with mold. But then the breathing stopped, and I realized the coats were swaying. Even though there was no air, I backed away. My flashlight caught something written on the inside of the door. Childlike handwriting again. "Play with us." The light flickered, and for just a moment, I saw shapes in the reflection of the glass window. 3 small figures standing in the hallway, watching me. They were motionless, their heads tilted slightly to the side. Then the light went out. Panic surged through me. I stumbled into the hall, shouting for my friends. Somewhere above me, I heard footsteps running, kids, by the sound of it. Then, a door slamming shut. I ran upstairs, my breath catching in my throat. The second floor was darker, colder. Every room looked the same: beds, toys, drawings on the walls. One of the drawings showed 4 stick figures standing outside the orphanage. One of them was crossed out in red that I didn't understand. Not until I saw Sarah's phone lying on the ground, still recording. The screen was cracked, but the camera was on, facing the ceiling. When I pressed play, the last few seconds of the recording played back, Sarah whispering, "I think I hear something." Then, faintly, the sound of a child's voice. "Found you." The video cut off there. I screamed their names again, but only my echo answered. My flashlight died completely, and for a few seconds, I stood in absolute darkness. Then, faintly, light began to flicker at the end of the hallway. It looked like candlelight. I followed it, step by step, until I reached a room filled with dozens of candles burning on the floor. Around them, small toys were arranged in a circle, like some kind of ritual. In the center of it all sat a single wooden doll, staring at the doorway. There was something else in the room, too. A sound, like whispering, but it wasn't coming from one place. It was all around me. Then, from behind the doll, a small figure stepped out. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7, her hair burnt on one side, her dress black with soot. She looked right at me and smiled. "You're it," she said softly. I ran. I don't even remember how I got out. I fell through a doorway, down the stairs, crashed through a broken window, and didn't stop running until I reached the car. Liam and Josh weren't there. Sarah's bag was still in the back seat. I called the police. But when they searched the building the next day, they found nothing. No phones, no tracks. No footprints except mine. They told me the orphanage had been abandoned for decades, that no one had been there since the fire. But when I went online a few days later, I found a photo someone had posted years ago. It showed 3 kids standing in front of the building, smiling. I in the background, barely visible through a window, was a 4th face. Mine. Story 2. The night shift. I never believed in ghosts. When you work as a night guard for as long as I have, you learn that most of the things that scare people are just shadows, wind, or your own imagination playing tricks on you. That was before Blackwood Orphanage. The security company I worked for had a temporary contract with the local council. They were planning to clear the land for development, new housing, maybe even a mall. My job was simple: keep trespassers out. Teenagers, photographers, anyone dumb enough to break in after dark. They told me to patrol the area once every 2 hours. No one mentioned that the place was haunted. It was late November when I started my first shift. The drive out there took nearly 40 minutes, and by the time I arrived, it was already foggy. The orphanage looked worse than I expected. Half the roof collapsed, most of the windows shattered. My flashlight beam could barely cut through the mist. Inside, the air was damp and cold. There was a smell I couldn't place, something like old paper and ash. I checked the ground floor first: classrooms, hallways, a dining area with rusted tables still in place. Everything was silent, except for the occasional drip of water from the ceiling. For the first few hours, nothing happened. I drank my coffee, listened to the radio, walked my rounds. Then, around 2:30 a.m., I noticed something strange. One of the second floor windows had light behind it. I stared at it for a moment, thinking maybe someone had broken in. The light wasn't steady. It flickered like candlelight. I grabbed my flashlight and my radio and started up the stairs. The steps creaked under my boots. At the top, I heard something that froze me mid-step: laughter. Children's laughter. It was faint, distant, like it was echoing from the end of a long hallway. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaking slightly. "Security." "Who's there?" No answer, just that same sound again. A giggle and the patter of small feet. I followed the sound into one of the rooms. My flashlight flickered across the walls. Old drawings of stick figures, flowers, suns, and clouds. Some of the paper was burned around the edges. Beneath one drawing was a name: Amy. The air got colder. I could see my breath. That's when I noticed the bed in the corner. On it sat a stuffed bear, dusty but upright, like someone had just left it there. It faced the door, and I swear, for a second, I thought its head turned. I backed out of the room and nearly tripped over something on the floor. It was a notebook, small, leather-bound, the pages yellowed with age. Inside, written in neat handwriting, were names and dates. Dozens of them. Each child's name had a date next to it. Until halfway through the book, where the dates stopped, the last entry simply said, "The fire is coming. We're going to hide. Miss Clara says we'll be safe." I felt something touch my sleeve. When I looked down, there was nothing there, just the faint pressure of small fingers that quickly let go. That was enough for me. I headed back downstairs to the security booth, but when I looked out the window, I froze. The courtyard lights, the ones I'd set up earlier, were on, but there were shapes moving between them. Small, dark figures darting across the grass, like children playing tag. I grabbed my radio. "Control, this is Unit 7 at Blackwood. I'm seeing movement outside the building, possible trespassers." "Static." I tried again. Nothing but white noise. Then, through the static, a voice whispered, faint, soft, childlike, "Come play with us." I dropped the radio. The lights outside flickered, and when they came back on, the courtyard was empty. Completely empty. I locked the booth door, sat down, and tried to calm my breathing. I told myself it was the fog, my tired eyes, the power lines messing with the radio. But then I heard it again, this time from inside the building. A piano. A single note, played slowly, again and again. I followed the sound to what used to be the recreation room. The piano was there, covered in dust, one leg broken. But the keys were moving. I could see them pressing down on their own. And sitting beside the piano was a woman. Her back was to me, her long gray hair falling over her shoulders. She was humming softly, the same tune that was playing. "Ma'am," I said, my voice trembling, "you're not supposed to be here." She stopped humming. Slowly, she turned her head toward me. Her face was pale, like paper, her eyes dark and hollow. "Shoo," she whispered. "You'll wake the children." I took a step back, and then all the piano keys slammed at once, a horrible metallic crash that echoed through the entire orphanage. I ran. I didn't care about my job, my paycheck, nothing. I ran straight out the door into the fog, not stopping until I reached my truck. The next morning, I quit. But here's the thing that still haunts me. A few weeks later, I was watching a local news segment about the redevelopment project. They showed footage of the site being demolished for just a moment as the camera panned. Across the broken walls, I saw something in one of the windows. A woman with long gray hair, standing perfectly still, watching the demolition crew, and behind her, shapes, small and motionless, children, lined up neatly, watching with her. Story 3. The voice in the basement. My brother disappeared 2 years ago. His name was Daniel, and he was obsessed with filming abandoned places for his YouTube channel. I used to tease him about it. Told him one day he'd find something he wished he hadn't. Turns out, I was right. The last video he uploaded was titled Exploring Blackwood Orphanage, Night Investigation. It cut off halfway through, mid-sentence, and his subscribers never heard from him again. The police said there was no evidence of foul play, no body, no sign of struggle. They assumed he just got lost in the woods. But I knew better. I watched that video 100 times. Every frame. At the end, just before the feed went black, I heard something faint in the background, a voice. It said his name, whispered it.so. A year later, I went there myself. The forest was silent that morning. Even the birds seemed to avoid the area. The orphanage looked worse than in his footage. Half the walls had collapsed, and ivy had swallowed most of the structure. Still, I found the front door hanging open, swaying gently. Inside, the air was heavy and cold. My flashlight beam caught dust floating like snowflakes. Every step echoed too loud. It felt like walking through a grave. I followed Daniel's path, step by step. He had filmed everything: the dining hall, the dormitory, the classrooms. In his video, he joked about hearing footsteps, about seeing a creepy little shadow. But when I stood there, it didn't feel like a joke. It felt like the walls themselves were listening. Then, I found his camera. It was lying under a pile of debris near the main hallway, half broken, but the memory card was still inside. My hands were shaking when I pocketed it. That's when I noticed something strange. A door at the end of the hall I hadn't seen before. It wasn't in Daniel's video. The door was small, metal, and chained shut. Faded letters above it read, "Basement, staff only." The chain looked new. Someone had tried to keep it closed. I should have left. Every instinct screamed at me to walk away. Instead, I broke the lock with a crowbar I'd brought just in case. The door opened with a hiss, and a smell of wet earth and rot hit me like a wave. The stairs descended into darkness. Halfway down, my flashlight flickered. That's when I heard it. A soft humming. A lullaby. The voice was female, low, calm, almost tender. It echoed through the basement like she was right beside me. I whispered, "Daniel?" The humming stopped. Then came the reply. A child's voice. "Come down. He's waiting." My stomach turned to ice. I kept walking anyway. The bottom was a narrow hallway lined with doors. The walls were covered in chalk drawings, smiling faces, stars, hearts. But the faces looked wrong. The eyes were dark smudges, and the smiles were jagged, uneven. Something dripped from the ceiling. I thought it was water until my flashlight caught the color. It was dark red. The humming started again, closer now. One of the doors creaked open on its own. I stepped inside. It was a small room, just a bed, a desk, and a single flickering candle. On the wall above the bed were names scratched into the plaster. Most were children's names. But near the bottom, freshly carved, was one more. Daniel. The candle went out. In the darkness, I heard footsteps, tiny ones, circling me. Then the sound of breathing, soft, shallow, childlike. "Daniel?" I whispered. A voice right behind me said, "He's part of us now." I turned, but there was nothing, only movement in the shadows, like shapes trying to form. Dozens of them. The air grew thick, cold, heavy with whispering. The walls seemed to pulse with sound, children's laughter, crying, and something else beneath it. A woman's voice, calm and distant, saying, "Sleep, my darlings. The fire can't hurt you anymore." The room started shaking. The drawings on the walls twisted, melting into screaming faces. My flashlight burst, plunging everything into blackness. Then I felt something grab my hand, small, cold fingers gripping tightly, and a voice, so close I could feel the breath, "Stay with us." I ripped my hand free and ran. I don't know how I found the stairs, but I didn't stop running until I was outside. The sun was rising, pale and weak through the trees. The building looked quiet again, peaceful. When I got home, I plugged in Daniel's memory card. Most of the files were corrupted, but one played. The screen was black. A child's voice whispered softly, almost singing, "Hide and seek. 1, 2, 3." Then, faintly, another voice joined in. A man's voice. Daniel's. 4, 5, 6. And at the very end, before the video cut out, a third voice whispered, quiet, right next to the microphone. "Your turn." Blackwood Orphanage still stands. The walls remember every laugh, every cry, every game that never truly ended. And sometimes, if you listen closely, you can still hear the footsteps echoing through the empty halls, calling out names long forgotten. 3 people went inside. 3 people came back changed, or didn't come back at all. The stories are different, the face is different, but the orphanage remains the same. Waiting, watching, playing. Some say curiosity is dangerous. Others say some places should never be found. Blackwood proves it. If you ever find yourself near an abandoned building, remember this: some games never end. And if it calls your name, it might not let you go. If you enjoyed these stories and want to hear more true terrifying tales, hit that like button, subscribe, and comment below. Tell us, which story sent chills down your spine the most? And would you dare step inside Blackwood Orphanage yourself?